Great, Dana. Thanks so much. Well, folks, thanks for joining today. We're really excited to share with you both our national programmatic efforts on these issues and our thinking, and then how that's translating into our work in Dallas with great partners like Texas Trees Foundation. When we founded our Climate Smart Cities program back in 2010, we wanted to kind of blow up our notion of green infrastructure as being just about water and try to think in more of a multiple benefit framework. And particularly, I think of interest for the folks on this call, folks who've been doing great work on urban forestry for a long time, finding more opportunities and pathways for advancing urban forestry by helping cities think about every greening investment through a multiple benefit framework. And this is ours of connect, cool, absorb, and protect. So connect, thinking about opportunities to enhance active transit connections and those links to public transit. Our cool strategy being about urban heat island mitigation. Our absorb strategy being about not just thinking of stormwater management from a runoff pollution perspective, but also thinking about an integrated water management view, how we can turn stormwater pollution into a source of local groundwater. And then our protect strategy, thinking about edge inundation risks that cities face. And ultimately thinking about how can we help cities visualize these objectives and then stack them together in multi-benefit projects. These are some cities across the country where we've launched this work in partnerships with city governments and others to begin to integrate this multiple benefit approach. And you can see Dallas right there in the center of the map. So I think a real key to our theory of change is that cities have a lot of the resources that they need to move forward on these issues. But one of the key barriers is we need to do a better job of visualizing these multiple benefit solutions together and co-investing in them. And so a lot of this presentation is going to talk about the technique that we've developed, some of the techniques and tools that we've developed to help cities do that visualization across agency and department silos. And then also how in that process agencies can bring in their private sector partners and partners from other levels of government as well into an integrated approach. So that's really a key component of our theory of change. Is the magic is about creating tools and opportunities for enhanced coordination, collaboration, and co-investment. And so this is the delivery model that we developed for our Climate Smart Cities program nationally to help our city partners move forward in that integrated way. And so the one key to the model is that we're doing all of our work in partnership with city government. So sitting down, laying out our vision for multiple benefit green infrastructure, hearing their visions and efforts already underway, and then talking about a collaboration and formalizing that collaboration with an MOU or some other kind of formal agreement. And then building a work plan where our organization and partners are bringing 4 contributions to help cities move forward on these issues. Research partnerships to fill data and knowledge gaps, planning tools, funding for implementation, and then getting implementation catalyzed through demonstration projects. And so I'll give you some examples of how some of those things have worked for us around the country, as, for example, they have here in Los Angeles. But actually, before we even get into doing those activities and developing those kinds of tools, I wanted to talk about one other thing that we've developed that ties to our theory of change, and we call it our discovery process. And this is a structured interview process that we've developed that we go through with each of our city partners to really understand better how are things currently working now. How are each of these, for example, different municipal agencies currently thinking about their green infrastructure investments? Where's their funding coming from? What are the legal controls or drivers of decision making? So that as we develop these collaborative approaches, they're really attuned to the core realities of the operating environment for our city partners, and that we're making sure that we're building strategies that are really going to be feasible and effective for moving forward. So I want to talk a little bit about research. We've been engaged in research at 2 levels. One is national level research, for example, partnering with Georgia Tech on trying to get a better handle on the potential for green infrastructure to help us deal with urban heat islands and with heat risk in cities, a really core concern for our organization and something that particularly ties to our equity and climate justice objectives, but then also working with research partners to develop city-specific research and data. So one great example is in Los Angeles, is working Arizona State and Caltech, they had been leading some very important carbon data development that goes all the way to the level of individual buildings and street segments in Los Angeles cities that they had targeted for doing this analysis. And so we developed a contract with Arizona State to get their technical assistance to bring this carbon mapping data into the work that we're doing with the city and other partners. We think of this tool that you're looking at here as really kind of the hub of the wheel for our collaboration with cities. This is an online decision support tool built using GIS technology that enables us to bring together data on connect, cool, absorb, protect, and social and demographic variables in cities to figure out where do we have the best opportunities to stack those outcomes together, where can we best serve the people in cities that are most in need of, for example, cooling in the face of heat waves, and what are the existing green infrastructure assets on the ground, and where are there the right kind of soils and other attributes for effective green infrastructure development, with that green infrastructure suitability folder that you see there on this particular tool. I'm showing you the tool that we built as part of our partnership with the City of Boston. And then we take all those data on those topics and we model them together to come up with overall priority layers for the city on connect, cool, absorb, protect, critical infrastructure, and social that we can really laser in on the highest priority areas. And these are some of the things that you can do with this tool. I mean, we think that the first and most important attribute of the tool is that it's built on the internet, so that this isn't owned by one organization on its desktop. You don't have to be a power user of GIS to be able to access this technology, but anyone can go to this essentially high-powered website, and with no special technology and a fairly minimal amount of training, can use this website to do some of the things that you see here on this slide. For example, call up a particular address and look at a specific property and see how does that property correspond with all the data in our tool. Is it a strategic site for our connect, cool, absorb, protect, and equity objectives? You can also do city-scale analysis. For example, show me all the parcels in the city that meet certain criteria. And so you can start looking at a broad scale to figure out where are there strategic properties and in strategic neighborhoods where you have aggregations of properties. And you can sort by features like what properties are vacant, which would obviously be a potential advantage if you're thinking about developing a green infrastructure project. So it's really not just a data viewer, it's a true decision-making tool that you can take all the way to the level of looking at individual properties and making important decisions about investment. Well, speaking of investment, one of the other components, as we all know, is cities are investing a lot of money in green infrastructure on all of Connect, Cool, Absorb, Protect, all the 4 of those objectives, but there's always a need for more. And so just as an example, in California and directly in our work in Los Angeles, we've been working from the state level, for example, where we collaborated with leaders in state government to create a new urban greening program, an $80 million program that can help fund climate-smart green infrastructure implementation that will both lower carbon emissions and serve disadvantaged communities. And other related programs, but also have worked in collaboration with the City and County of Los Angeles on targeted ballot measures that just passed in the last election cycle on transportation funding and park development, again, in both cases with a specific tie to climate smart cities objectives. So there's some really exciting work going on around the country that we're trying to help support to create the resources that we all need to move forward on a climate smart city strategy. So what does this look like when it hits the ground? And you might wonder that you don't see a whole lot of trees in this picture, and I will explain in a moment how this connects to urban forestry and our broader vision for cities. This is an alleyway in Los Angeles, and Los Angeles has a lot of them. Los Angeles has actually about 900 miles of alleys, which is about the same amount of land as 2 central parks. And those alleys are heavily concentrated in the most underserved parts of the city. And so as we and our partners at the city and others started to think about green infrastructure opportunities, we started to see alleys as a great point of intersection with communities. And so we've been working in partnership with multiple city agencies and with great local community groups like Equipo Verde here in the Avalon neighborhood of South Los Angeles on turning what you saw previously into a green alley that looks like this, which is a great example of connect, cool, and absorb. And while there's some greening that we can integrate into the alleys, importantly, these green alley efforts are linked to street tree replacement on the surrounding streets. And these are parts of Los Angeles that have, 5 or at most 10% tree cover, canopy cover, compared to 20 or 30% for other parts of Los Angeles. So when you bring together the Connect, Cool, Absorb, Protect benefits of these green alleys with a neighborhood scale urban forestry effort, you start to get, for example, a really powerful cooling effect as well as stormwater benefits. And just to speak a little bit more about some of those other benefits, this is some of the inside baseball of the water features of these green alleys, which are designed not just to take stormwater off the streets and keep it out of the Los Angeles River, but actually to use that dry well that you see down there on the lower right corner to get that water all the way down to the aquifers under Los Angeles. Los Angeles has a really powerful opportunity to import less water, which is very carbon intensive and certainly is a sort of a risk for the city in terms of future sustainability, and get more of that water locally by returning these kinds of sponge-like features back to the city. But it takes this kind of high engineering to do that. And then speaking about the urban heat island effect, these are high albedo pavings that we use in the alleys to complement the vegetation and canopy cover that we're putting into these neighborhoods for cooling. Well, one of the important things that we're trying to do is make sure we learn from the implementation and feed that back into the planning and our planning tool in particular. I think that's really one of the advantages of having a GIS tool that lives on the internet. It's not a written plan that's kind of locked in one place in time, but this is something that can be updated and is updated very regularly, and in part informed by how we use the data, how effective has it been for our planning questions out in the field. And I gave you an example of green alleys, but that's just one of many, many examples where we can move from a kind of a single focus of green infrastructure on how do we manage stormwater, how do we deal with things like combined sewer overflows, into this true multiple benefit approach that you see here on the right. And we've been excited by the diversity of kinds of green infrastructure projects that we've seen that can advance this multiple benefit approach and can integrate urban forestry. And one of the most recent for us is in Boston. We've been doing some urban agriculture work that we're now designing differently around stormwater capture on those sites with new underground features, and we're linking to urban forestry efforts in surrounding neighborhoods, as well as now efforts to create what we're calling food forests on some of those sites that are particularly important for heat island mitigation. And lastly, I'd say, as we think about the opportunity for the approach that I just described to achieve our collective goals for climate smart cities, certainly what I spent most of my time talking about all the way on the right there, the green infrastructure project development, that is sort of where the rubber meets the road. But we think there are a lot of other really important things that we can all do in this kind of a collaborative structure. And it starts with coalition building and sharing information and learning from each other. And so that's one of the things that we're trying to do in each of our cities, is to convene lots of partners within city government and from the private sector to work together, starting with how we build our GIS tools. That's a collaborative process, but then keeping that collaboration going among all those different partners throughout the entire effort. And then also to recognize that the kind of information that I've described can be used to guide project development on the ground, but it also can be used for other kinds of policy and decision making. For example, how cities start to think about zoning along waterfronts and other kinds of policy actions that cities can take to support the right kinds of decisions and green infrastructure implementation long term. So with that said, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Robert.